If you run ads, study competitors, or work in e-commerce, you already know this problem. You want to know what other brands are doing on Meta, what campaign offers they're pushing, creatives they're using, landing pages they're sending traffic to. But actually checking all of that manually every week is a pain. So I decided to automate the whole thing. In this video, I built an n8n workflow that tracks the meta ads of 3 major UK vitamin brands, uses AI to analyze what their campaigns are doing, turns it into a clean PDF report with the strategic insights, and emails it to me automatically every single week. Just one workflow doing the whole job. Let's get into it. For this project, I tracked Vitabiotics, MyProtein, and Nature's Best. We wanted the automation to do 5 things. First, scrape meta ad data for each brand. Second, clean and structure that data. Third, send the data into AI so I get actual analysis, not just a dump of URLs and ad text. Then, build a presentation. And fifth, email that report to me automatically weekly. So instead of me opening Meta Ad Library, checking 3 brands, taking screenshots, trying to spot patterns, and summarizing it myself, it just arrives. That's the kind of automation I care about, something that genuinely removes repeat work. Before anything, I described the whole vision to ChatGPT and asked it to write a master prompt, and it covered the full scope of what I wanted to build. Strategy, tools, workflow, everything. Then I took that prompt to Claude, but with one extra ask. I wanted it to pressure test the plan. Tell me what wouldn't work, what would cost money, and what the realistic path forward looked like. And it immediately flagged 2 things. First, the official Meta Ads Library API does not let you download images or videos, text only, which makes the whole thing pointless if you're trying to actually see the creatives. Second, Gamma, which was in the original plan for generating presentations, has no API. You can't automate it, so we had to pivot on both, and that's where the interesting part starts. Here's what we landed on and why each tool made the cut. I created the accounts for all, initiating session 1. n8n. This is the automation brain. Think of it like Zapier, but with more control and a free cloud tier that's actually useful. Apify. This is a scraping platform with pre-built tools called actors. There's one specifically for the Meta Ads library, and unlike the official API, it actually returns image URLs. That was the missing piece. OpenAI. Once we have all the raw ad data, we feed it to GPT and ask it to analyze everything. What hooks are being used, what offers are running, what the cross-brand patterns look like. APITemplate.io. This takes the analysis and image URLs and generates it a polished PDF. No design skills needed. imgbb, a free image hosting service. We need this because Facebook's image URLs expire and block third-party scrapers like Apify. Gmail sends the finished PDF to your inbox weekly. Total cost is roughly a few pence a week, essentially free. Before building the automation in n8n, we tested Apify manually with session 3 first. I went to the Apify store, searched for Meta Ad Library scrapers, and there were about 6 options. I just asked Claude which one to use based on ratings and usage, and it pointed me to one by a developer called Igalizola, 5 stars, over 1,000 users, recently updated. I configured it with one of my 3 brands, Vitabiotics, set the country to GB, limited to 20 results, and ran it. What came back was genuinely impressive. Real ad body text, real headlines, real CTAs, landing page URLs, and most importantly, actual image URLs that loaded properly. That confirmed the whole approach would work. If Apify hadn't returned images, we'd have needed a completely different strategy. Then I grabbed the Facebook page IDs for all 3 brands, Vitabiotics, MyProtein, and Nature's Best, using the Meta Ad Library website directly. Free, took 2 minutes. Before touching n8n, we started session 2, building the presentation template. The reason, we needed to know the exact field names that feed data into n8n. I logged into APITemplate, went to create a new template, and first small detour, there was no PowerPoint option, only PDF and image. So we pivoted to PDF, which honestly is fine for a weekly report. It opens on any device, looks identical every time, and you don't need PowerPoint to view it. We chose the HTML template option, which sounds intimidating, but Claude just handed me the full code. I pasted it in, previewed it, and the structure was already there. Cover page, 1 page per brand with image placeholders, cross-brand analysis, strategic takeaways. I tweaked the cover page color to white so it matched the rest, saved the template, and grabbed two things, the template ID and the API key. Both go into n8n later. 6 pages. Clean layout. Done. Now the actual build in n8n. I'm going to walk you through the logic of each node we added. I created this as a complete beginner with Claude's instructions. The trigger, a schedule node set to every Monday at 8 a.m. That's the heartbeat of the whole thing. Brand configuration, a set node where I define the 3 brands and their Facebook page IDs. This is the only place where brand-specific information lives. If I ever want to swap a brand out, I change it here and nowhere else. Preparing the loop, a code node converts those 3 brands into a proper list so n8n can process them one at a time. Claude wrote the code. I pasted it. The scraping loop. This is where it gets interesting. A loop to define ad campaigns data scraping. Apify scraper. A request node hits the Apify API and triggers a scrape job, 1 brand at a time. I added the input instructions and code Claude gave and also added my Apify API key at the end of the URL to connect the tool. The execution of this step was successful. Wait node, adding 90 seconds so that Apify scraper gets enough time to gather the ads data. Fetch node, a request node to fetch the data generated by the Apify scraper. At this point, I quickly went back and renamed the nodes we had added so it is easier to keep track. Extract brand data. We needed to turn raw Apify fetch data into clean fields. The aggregation. Once all 3 brands are processed, an aggregate node collects everything into one single object. 1 item, 3 brands. But there were errors, and we had to delete the node and correct its path from the brand loop node, meaning once all the Apify data collection is complete and done, then aggregation starts. This process took some time to get perfect. Then with final changes, we got the desired results. This is what gets passed to OpenAI. The AI analysis. This is the brain of the whole thing. 1 OpenAI call, 1 prompt, all 3 brands' data going in together. The prompt asks for structured JSON output, a summary per brand, the active offer, CTA patterns, ad formats, landing pages, cross-brand themes, top hooks, which brand is being most aggressive, and 3 strategic takeaways. The key thing we had to fix here. The AI was hallucinating, making up offers, inventing discounts that didn't exist. The reason was the actual ad data wasn't reaching the prompt correctly. Once that was fixed with an additional node, guided by Claude, the output became genuinely useful. Real, verifiable, accurate. The PDF generation. I followed the steps and also got the API key from settings to add and execute. We had our first PDF generated. It contained the 3 brand pages and relevant details like hooks, offers, landing pages, cross-brand analysis, and key takeaways. However, 1 major issue: no images showing up. The reason? Facebook's image CDN blocks third-party servers. So when APITemplate tried to load the image URLs directly, it got refused. Claude suggested first continuing the build and using placeholder images. And we will fix this issue at the end. Gmail, ICE, we added the email ID and code given. We also had to add a node in between to get the PDF in binary format for Gmail to read and then send as an email. We connected the Gmail credentials and account. That's the full chain. Then, we executed the whole workflow once, but faced a big error. I was receiving 7 emails for this workflow. Our version of the wait node inside the loop during fetching Apify campaign details caused all 3 brands to fire simultaneously and independently, and the workflow ultimately ended up sending 7 emails instead of 1. It took some troubleshooting to restructure it properly. We ultimately had to delete 6 nodes and rebuild the workflow with new codes and logics. This step also took around 10 to 15 minutes, but once it was right, it's been clean ever since, receiving only one dedicated email upon executing the workflow. The last piece, and the most satisfying to solve, was images. The fix required a few extra nodes in n8n. For each image, we first download it using a request node. This works because n8n makes the request and Facebook allows it. Then we immediately upload that binary image to imgbb, which gives us a clean, stable, public URL. Then that URL goes to APITemplate. It sounds like a lot, but it's just 3 extra nodes running in a small loop. Download, upload, tag the result. Then we reassemble all 6 image URLs and pass them forward. The end result: real Vitabiotics ad creatives in the PDF. Real MyProtein influencer content. For Nature's Best, the images are still placeholders, but that's not a workflow failure. They run DCO ads, which are dynamic and don't have static images attached at all. Nothing we can do about that one. Every Monday morning, this arrives in my inbox. A PDF with a cover page, 3 brand pages each, showing real ad creatives alongside the analysis, a cross-brand comparison section, and 3 strategic takeaways. All grounded in what these brands are actually running that week, not what they ran 6 months ago. The email itself has a quick summary, the active offer per brand, the top hooks, which brand is being most aggressive. The detail is in the PDF. From idea to working automation, 1 day. And the only things I manually did were paste codes Claude gave me, configure some inputs, and click execute. And honestly, the fact that someone with no technical background can build something like this in a single day is still kind of wild to me. If you want to build this yourself, I've linked the tools in the description. If this was useful, subscribe, because I test real AI honestly as a non-technical person.